Yes, hello everybody. Welcome back to YouTube. Welcome back to Threadman Chaza. I hope this Friday is treating you very, very well. The day after one of the best games I've seen for a long, long time, Barcelona against Manchester United in the Europa League. What an absolutely brilliant game that was. Obviously a 2-2 draw in the end. Lots of mixed emotions, mixed feelings from everybody after the game. I did a poll after the game and it was very, very split between happy, disappointed. A small proportion of people were very happy. A small proportion of people were very unhappy. And I think around 70% or more, around that sort of percentage, were in the middle somewhere. So some were slightly disappointed. Some were quite happy with the result, the performance. There's a few things to talk about. So yes, guys, please do, as always, let me know your thoughts in the comments about this. How did you find the game? Please do subscribe if you're new as well. And please, obviously, do like the video if you enjoy. So as we always do with these tactical, analytical videos, we like to focus on one particular element because obviously when you do try and analyze a full game, it's extremely difficult. Well, it's almost impossible to cover every single detail and keep the video short. So what I do like to do, I like to do around a 20-minute video. We focus on one particular element of the game. And I do think that's the best way to go about things, really, the most efficient way to go about things. So today, we're going to talk about Manchester United out of possession. So if you did watch the show that we did before this game, do make sure you go and watch that if you haven't watched that, or go and have a look towards the end at the lineup I have sort of set out on that stream, because we talked in the comments. A lot of people were making comments about Dalot or Wan-Bissaka. So obviously there was a bit of a debate about Dalot or Wan-Bissaka, and we talked about on that particular stream, would Dalot play, because Barcelona have a really, really high press, a very, very good press. They've got some of the best pressing statistics in La Liga this season. So obviously Diogo Dalot can evade the press better than Wan-Bissaka, a little bit more comfortable there. Or would we go with Wan-Bissaka, obviously, because he's got a good record in European games in terms of his dogged defending, his good one-on-one defending. But we did say that Barcelona don't play with a very, very direct wide player on that side. So obviously they had Gavi on that side, but he comes much more inverted to make this sort of 3-2-2-3, 3-2-5 shape for Barcelona. So obviously then with Jordi Alba or Balde pushing on the left from the left-back position really, really high. So we did talk about these things during the preview. But you did pick Wan-Bissaka, so I think this was interesting. He did go with Wan-Bissaka in the end. But United here in this particular game, I think a lot of people I think we all knew sort of the majority who was going to start. The majority of us predicted 10 out of the 11 to start at least, and then Wan-Bissaka or Dalot was a little bit of a question mark. But we did see the team start that most of us thought would. So we had obviously De Gea in goal, Malacia, Shaw, Varane, Wan-Bissaka. And we had Casemiro, Fred, Bruno, Weghorst, Rashford and Sancho. Now, obviously, Wout Weghorst played as a striker throughout a lot of his career, and he played there in his first few games for us as well. But obviously, away at Leeds, Erik ten Hag made a slight tactical switch. So as we covered in that video last week, Wout Weghorst ended up playing in the number 10 position. I think it was last week. It might have even been this week. I think it might have even been this Monday after the game against Leeds last Sunday. So there's been so many games I've forgotten. But we said that Wout Weghorst obviously played in the number 10 position, with Rashford moving to number 9, Bruno to the right, and Garnacho came on the left-hand side. So there was a lot of questions. Is Wout Weghorst in the number 10 position? Is this something that we're going to see more often? Or is this something that is only just a one-time thing? And I said in my analysis, I said, I don't expect him to play in this position from the start in lots of games. I thought in certain games, perhaps, but I didn't expect him to play there from the start. But he actually did play in midfield from the start in this game. So this is very, very interesting. Out of possession in this particular game, Wout Weghorst was actually closer to Casemiro than Fred was for a lot of the game. So this is just a still image that I've got from the game. So this is nothing too analytical on this particular photo, but it's just to see the positions of the three players. So obviously this, in a few seconds after this still picture, the players move positions slightly. But for a lot of the game, out of possession, Fred was our most advanced midfield player, and we're going to talk about why that is now. Okay, so in this game, Manchester United were very, very brave, and I didn't quite expect this. I expected Manchester United to be slightly more conservative. I expected Barcelona to come out of the traps really quickly, dominate the game, but it wasn't quite the case. So you'll see here, this is an image taken just before half-time. There's a lot of earlier examples as well of this. But Manchester United in midfield look to go man-to-man as much as possible. So you'll see there, De Jong is very, very close to Fred there on the image. You've got Kessié, Weghorst is extremely tight to him. And you've got Casemiro very, very tight to Sergi Roberto, who came on for Pedri, obviously, when he got that injury. So you'll see here, it's really, really interesting. There's a clear pattern, and this pattern sort of carries on throughout the game. So you have De Jong is being closed down very quickly by Fred, and Kessié the same by Weghorst. Casemiro obviously has to be a bit careful because he knows that Gavi comes inside from that left-hand side, and Wan-Bissaka has to be careful of the overlap from Alba. So Casemiro had to be very, very careful about Pedri before he got injured, and then Roberto after Pedri went off. He had to be very, very careful, obviously, because Gavi is also coming into those central areas. And you often saw Rafael Varane sort of going in on Gavi there when he came inverted. So Rafael Varane was really, really aggressive there on Gavi. So United managed this really, really well from a sort of team perspective. United managed Barcelona very, very well out of possession. So obviously, I think a lot of us expected Barcelona to absolutely dominate the game, but they didn't. And I think Barcelona had some really, really good moments, but we restricted, I think, the likes of De Jong, the likes of Kessié, to not extremely little, but we restricted them as much as we could have done, really, through the use of being really, really aggressive out of possession, through the use of Fred and Weghorst staying really, really tight to De Jong and Kessié. So the reason being that Fred was our most advanced midfielder out of possession for often. He was often our most advanced. Obviously, players change positions all the time on the field, so you never stay in one static position. Players overlap and move past each other or move behind each other at times. But a lot of the time, Fred was our most advanced midfield player, and that was because, as we know, as you probably know from doing your research of Frenkie de Jong when we were linked to him, and we might even go back for him in the summer, but you know from your knowledge of Frenkie de Jong, if you've watched him, that Frenkie de Jong is very often very, very deep during his team's build-up, right? So we know that Frenkie de Jong is very, very comfortable in these deeper areas for Barcelona, for the Netherlands, for Ajax as well. We know that he's very, very comfortable in these deep areas. So Erik ten Hag had to think about how he wanted to counteract Frenkie de Jong. Now, obviously, when we talk about Weghorst in midfield, we would have thought that if Weghorst was playing in midfield, he'd be in the number 10 position again. So you'd have thought, right, you wouldn't want Weghorst too close to our own goal. You know, he's not positionally wise defensively, you know, tracking back defensively. He's not the quickest, so we don't really want him there. But what Erik ten Hag thought about was Kessié is not as much of a threat as De Jong during build-up. So I want to try and disrupt De Jong as much as possible. And out of Fred and Weghorst, who is that player that can disrupt De Jong as much as possible? Well, it's Fred. Why? Because he's more tenacious, he's more aggressive, he's quicker, he's like a little terrier, really, really close to De Jong. He'll get beat a few times, but he will always stick to De Jong and he won't run out of energy in there. And that's why Fred was tasked with De Jong, and that's why you often see Fred in these images higher than Weghorst, sorry, when we are pressing, because De Jong likes to come deeper than Kessié did. So really what Ten Hag thought was, right, De Jong is their biggest threat in build-up, so we're going to put Fred onto De Jong. Weghorst, you know, Kessié is a good player, don't get me wrong, he's a good player, but he's not as, he can't turn as quickly as De Jong can. I don't think he's got some of the passing ability that De Jong has in terms of sort of progressive passing, finding those openings, the ball's in behind. I don't think De Jong is brilliant at sort of his progressive passing. He's not as good as that as he is with his carrying. I don't think he's world class with his progressive passing, De Jong. I think he's very good at it. But I do think that his carrying is probably a bigger threat. And I think that's what Erik ten Hag was trying to counteract here. I think he was trying to think, well, Fred, you can cover more ground, you're more tenacious, you're more aggressive, so I'm going to put you onto De Jong. And then Weghorst, I'm going to put you onto Kessié. Also, Kessié is more of a physical player, so De Jong, Ten Hag might have thought, well, you know, I'm going to put Weghorst up against Kessié. He's more of a physical presence. Weghorst might be able to, you know, a lot of people have been disappointed about Weghorst in the air, and yet he's not the best in the air, which is crazy to say for such a tall player. And this is where the sort of how tall or small you are doesn't dictate how good you are in the air. I think people got a bit mixed up with that with Martinez when he came to United, and people didn't do their research properly. I won't name names, but yes, it's not all about how tall or small you are. It's about how you jump and your positioning and your movements. But he still causes havoc in there, Weghorst. You know what I mean? So he causes havoc in there. It's quite difficult to take the ball. I think when it's at his feet, he's quite technical. He's got quite good technical. His technical ceiling is quite high for such a tall profile. So he thought, well, let's put Weghorst against Kessié. He's more of a physical battle in there. He can cause a bit of havoc, make it hard for Kessié. And then obviously Casemiro is Casemiro. He's going to play sort of behind those two midfield players. And obviously, as I said, he had the task of not so much the man marking. He did go in on Roberto and Pedri quite often, but obviously he's also got to worry about the movements inside. So obviously we know with Xavi's system, they like to create this box midfield. You can actually see it here on the screen. So you'll see De Jong and Kessié and Roberto that I've sort of labelled, and also just over to the far side of that picture, if you look, that's also Gavi there. So you'll see, so where Wan-Bissaka is pointing over on that our right-hand side, you see Jordi Alba's there, and then you've got Gavi there. So you'll see there they've got sort of a box in midfield. So that's what Xavi likes to do. So obviously Casemiro has got to be a bit careful. He's just got to be wary of that inside run from Gavi. So this was how United set up for a lot of the games. So you'll see here again, this is another example. This is from the 10th minute of the game. So this was when Pedri was playing. Casemiro does this time go really, really tight on Pedri. You'll see Fred on De Jong, and you'll see Weghorst on Kessié. Obviously, what does that do? It then obviously can open up that switch of play. So we saw quite a few times that switch of play from Barcelona out to Jordi Alba, who was in loads of space, as you can see there, because Gavi was making that inside run. That dragged Wan-Bissaka more inside. You've also got Lewandowski opposite, sort of gets taken up that space, which means Varane has to take care of him. And that obviously leaves space then for Jordi Alba out on that left-hand side. So we saw quite a few times Jordi Alba in the first half, I would say, more than the second half, really finding himself in a lot of space because of how Barcelona, we call it sort of overload to isolate. So it's this sort of mechanism where you can overload one area of the pitch. What does that do? Well, that drags more opposition players towards that area. What does that do? It then leaves more space in another area for you to obviously try and get some dominance and try and impact the game. So we saw that quite a few times from Barcelona. So obviously, as we talked about, if you did watch the stream from yesterday, and I've talked about this a lot before, it's all about trade-offs. And somebody mentioned in the stream yesterday about opportunity cost, if you don't know from economics. It's basically that there's always going to be a cost to not choosing choosing one thing over another. Yes, so there's always going to be a trade-off somewhere. And in this particular game, Manchester United, as I said, we should have done during our stream yesterday, Manchester United should prioritise the central areas of the pitch over the wide areas, because you've got Tyrell Malacia up against Rafinha. Tyrell Malacia is very, very good one-on-one, very, very aggressive. Same with Wan-Bissaka as well. So I felt that we could leave those areas one-on-one, Rafinha against Malacia, and Alba or Balde. Obviously, Balde came on in the second half late on against Wan-Bissaka. So I felt like we could do that, and Ten Hag felt that as well. So yeah, this was how United sets up. And there's many, many examples during the game where you can take screenshots here and see how close Fred is to De Jong and how close Weghorst is to Kessié. And I think Manchester United really, really did as much as they could have done against those midfield players. Now, this is another image from the second half. So we've just equalised. So obviously we got our goal. Obviously Alonso scored for Barcelona from the corner, and then obviously Marcus Rashford with a brilliant finish pass to Stegen for our equaliser. We've just got an equaliser. So you'd have thought Manchester United, obviously there's no away goals anymore in European competition, but still you've scored away from home. You're drawing 1-1 against a team that's conceded 7 league goals all season. I think they've conceded 1 league goal at home all season, and that was a penalty against Espanyol. I think it was Joselu for Espanyol who got the penalty and scored it. So you'd have thought Manchester United, oh wow, we've got let's sit back a bit. Let's go into a mid block or a low block. Let's try and protect what we have. No, that's not what we do anymore here. We go to try and score goals, and we want to play on the front foot. And this is a clear example of it. So Manchester United did not just sit back and thought, a draw is a good result here. You'll see here, particularly man-to-man, how aggressive Manchester United are. So you'll see, look how many Manchester United bodies are in there. You'll see Weghorst in the middle of the picture there. That's Kessié. So if you look at where the referee is, the referee in the yellow shirt, just to the right-hand side of that, that's Weghorst, and then that's Kessié. So Weghorst is still, we know about Weghorst in terms of his pressing stats, in terms of his intensity. He might not have the engine to work at that level for the whole game, which is absolutely fine. But the little bursts of press from Wout at times were really good for us. And I think Marcus Rashford has also improved, and Sancho. You can see physically, I think Rashford and Sancho physically how they've improved. Obviously Rashford in the summer with the work he's done with his upper body strength. And also his pressing has improved, not just the frequency, but also the sort of how effective it's been. And I think with Sancho going and having that break when he did in the Netherlands, I think Ten Hag would have seen some things in these last few games where he'd think, wow, I think that might have actually worked. Sort of that physical work that Sancho's putting in. And Manchester United pressed excellently well, and this actually led to Rafael Varane winning back possession. And we had that chance where Sancho entered the box. He played it into Rashford, and Rashford's shot was blocked, and ter Stegen gathered it. I can't show the video, obviously, on here for copyright, etc. But that was the sequence that this sort of press led to. And there's many other examples during the game. I tweeted this out earlier today where Manchester United didn't look to play out from the back, because Man United had a few problems. We know we have problems playing out from the back. And United sort of played it slightly longer into Weghorst. Even if he didn't win the header, or he didn't win the duel, United at least can push up the pitch. The ball is in Barcelona's half. We can push up the pitch. We've got no particular danger there. And United counter-pressed quite a few times in that first half and actually won back possession and created 1 or 2 opportunities from that. So Manchester United, I would say, they managed the game really well out of possession in this particular 90 minutes. Obviously, Barcelona had some great chances. Obviously, we did as well. But obviously, Barcelona, Casemiro knocked it onto his own post. We had Rafinha, had a brilliant effort that was drilled wide. David De Gea made 1 or 2 important saves for us as well. Obviously, Barcelona did create some chances, but you have to expect that. If you're a Manchester United fan coming away to this sort of stadium, this sort of team this season, as I said, I think they've scored 43 goals in 21 league games, and they concede 7 on average. So more or less every game, they're averaging sort of 2 in every 3 matches. They're averaging 2-0 wins, and then the other time they're averaging a 2-1 win, because obviously they're conceding 7 goals in 21 league games. So they're conceding 1 goal every 3 games, and they're scoring 2 goals every game. So they're winning 2-0, 2-0, 2-1, 2-0, 2-0, 2-1, and that, on average, that's the sort of the wins they're getting. So for Manchester United to come here and not just sort of get lucky with Barcelona, but actually feel like they should have won the game and were leading towards the end of the game and scored 2 goals and had Marcus Rashford through on goal with a very contentious decision where Koundé didn't get punished for that foul. I think Manchester United will look at this, and Erik Ten Hag will look at this and think, when we go out to Old Trafford next week, if we can replicate this sort of performance out of possession, and we can in possession, can we take our chances better? Can we be a little bit more intricate in the final third? Can we make that right decision? And I think Manchester United will look at this and think we've got a really, really good chance of getting through. We can really do this. So overall, I'm really, really happy with this performance out of possession from Manchester United. I thought the man-to-man press was really, really good. I thought in possession, I think we made a lot of sloppy passes at times, but it's to be expected when you're playing a team like Barcelona. I do think some unforced errors at times, though, where Barcelona's press wasn't as good as maybe we expected it to be, but we still couldn't quite get that right pass there. And I think we did, although Fred provided us, as I said, he managed to slow down the impact from De Jong. De Jong had some great touches at times, but he didn't dominate and impact the game maybe as he would have liked. And I think that's where Fred comes in. However, if we flip that to the other side, that's where we miss Christian Eriksen, a bit more guile in midfield. I think people focus a lot on his passing accuracy, which is maybe lower than you would have thought, around the high 70% sometimes in games. And you think with Christian Eriksen, you're surprised he loses the ball that much and that often. But I think when Manchester United just need somebody to make the right pass at the right time towards the right direction of the pitch to the right player, I think that is where Christian Eriksen, obviously being injured, does hamper us and does maybe cause us one or two issues. But we've obviously got Martinez and Sabitzer, who will, I imagine, come in for the second leg. We've also got, obviously, Martial, McTominay and Anthony. Although obviously, Martial is very, very injury prone and he hasn't been performing to the best of his ability. And obviously, McTominay is somebody who gets a lot of criticism. You're just adding, if you can get those squad members back, you're adding members to the squad. You're reducing the risk of injury because you're bringing players back in. Obviously, embed them back in slowly, so make sure they get back up to speed and don't have a recurrence of an injury. But also, you're thinking, well, that gives us the opportunity to give the likes of, Casemiro, Rashford, whoever, if we are winning a game comfortably, we can take them off for the last 15, 20 minutes. Although, Ten Hag doesn't like too much rotation. Getting those players back for the second leg, I think, will be absolutely key. One more thing, possibly no Pedri. He looked like he had a hamstring injury. Hamstring injury, sort of, they can take up to 6 weeks sometimes, or even longer. So no Pedri possibly for the second leg for Barcelona, and also no Gavi because he's suspended. So I think Manchester United will look at this and they'll think we've got a real good chance of going into the round of 16. So thanks a lot, guys, for watching. As always, we'd like to focus on one particular element in particular. I think that makes these videos really, really more concise and we can focus on one particular aspect. I know I mentioned a few other aspects as well. There was obviously so much more to talk about from yesterday's game. But of course, eventually across the whole season, we'll cover every player, every element, out of possession, in possession, set pieces, every part of the pitch, goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, attacking players, all the thirds of the pitch. Eventually, we'll get through all the analysis by the end of the season. But I think it's nice around 20, 25 minutes to have these videos just to focus on one particular aspect. But I hope you enjoyed, guys. As always, please leave a like if you enjoyed. Please do subscribe if you're new. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of our performance? Out of 10, how would you rate it? Who do you think was our man of the match? What do you guys think of the game? Please get involved in the comments. There's the written version of this analysis on my Twitter as well at ThreadmanChazza, so please check that out as well. If you want to see the written version, goes into a bit more written. Some people prefer visual, some people prefer written, spoken, whichever you prefer. You can go to that analysis. That's why I like to do this more visual analysis on here and the written analysis on Twitter, because I think it's nice to have both available for everybody. So thanks a lot, guys. Really, really appreciate all the support recently. We will be back after the Leicester game talking about what happened during that game. Hopefully another 3 points. Cheers, guys.